Well, it's February now, and this is the week of Valentine's Day, the week of love, if you will. And so I figured I would give you guys a video that's all about love, kind of. So I'm going to give you my top 10 favorite couples from movies and TV. Couple of disclaimers here, though. I am not including anything from anime or manga. This is specifically movies and television. And also, unlike a lot of my other top 10 lists, this isn't necessarily a ranking list. I'm not necessarily going for my top 10 in any kind of discernible order, except my top number one is probably correct. But besides that, this is just sort of a top 10 in general list of my favorite couples from movies and television. There's going to be some serious picks on here. There's going to be some sillier picks on here. I'm trying to, run the gamut of different versions of love, different incarnations of love across the board. So let's get right into it with my number 10. And my number 10 is actually going to be Chucky and Tiffany. Now, even though I said I'm not really going in any kind of order, and I'm not, I still chose to put Chucky and Tiffany at number 10 because unlike all of the others on this list, this is not really a good or stable relationship in any way, shape, or form. Like, Chucky and Tiffany, they work very great together, and it's fascinating to watch them kill people together, but half the movies and in the TV show, they're trying to kill each other just as much as they're trying to kill other people. Like, they always have some gigantic blowout. They always end up betraying one another, and they always end up battling to the death at the end of the movie or end of the season. So, like, Chucky and Tiffany, they look great on paper. I mean, you got the short, manic murdering ginger, and then you got the big titty goth GF. I mean, this should be a match made in heaven. At least from a short ginger's perspective, it should be. But it's not. It's clearly a match made in hell, which is exactly where these characters are going when they die. Maybe. I don't know. They never discussed it because they have died and gotten brought back, and no one mentioned hell. Anyways, whether or not hell exists in the Chucky universe, Chucky and Tiffany are a joy to watch on screen. They are so funny together. They have amazing chemistry back and forth between the voice acting of Brad Dourif and Jennifer Tilly. These are just two characters that I enjoy seeing on screen together, whether they're together or whether they're trying to kill one another. Bride of Chucky specifically is just one of those movies I've seen so many times and I don't even really know why. It's sort of a bizarre comfort movie for me, and I don't really have any explanation as to why that is. It's not even my favorite movie in the Child's Play series. That would be part 2. But for some reason, I've seen Bride of Chucky the most, and it's probably the movie I'm going to continue to rewatch the most. I can't explain it, but yeah, they need to be on the list. At my number 9, we're going to stay in the realm of horror for just a little bit, and I'm going to say Dewey and Gale from the Scream franchise. Yes, played by Courtney Cox and David Arquette, who actually were together in real life at one point in time. I think they got together during the Scream 2 era, but it actually really helps the film because you can sense that chemistry between them. I wouldn't necessarily say this is couple goals because they do get into a lot of arguments and back and forth, but they're both kind of fiery people. So even though it wouldn't work for me, there are some people out there that are like that like the argumentation between the two of them is not actually toxic, but something that they have fun with and turns them on. I don't really know. I can't describe it. I'm not a psychologist. But in the case of Dewey and Gale, it kind of works because their banter always leads to some kind of more heated moment. And then at the end of the day, they're not really trying to hurt each other, and they always have each other's backs. And whenever one or the other is in trouble or in some kind of danger, like the other one shows their true colors, and they really do try to help each other survive throughout the course of these movies. We're not going to talk about Scream 5 right now. I just don't have it in me to talk about that movie. But for Scream 1, 2, 3, and 4, Dewey and Gale, they're up there for me. They're always just a couple I really remember. When it comes to horror movie couples or just movie couples in general, they're, one of the first ones I always think of. For my number 8 pick, I'm going all the way back in time to my childhood. And not just like my childhood as in like 10, 11 years old. I'm talking early childhood. Maybe the first couple I ever shipped when I was 5 or 6 years old, and still to this day, how they ended this relationship just pisses me off to no end. And I'm talking about Kimberly and Tommy from the Power Rangers. Yes, okay, all right. I know. It's a kid's show, and it's more focused on the action and the martial arts and the monsters and all that. That's what drew me in as a kid, and that's why I still love Power Rangers to this day. At least the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, after In Space and the original cast and the timeline changed, then I just kind of tuned out. But anyways, besides that, the point is that Kimberly and Tommy were my first kind of real exposure to like wanting to see two characters get together, and the show steadily built this over time. And even though the Red Ranger Jason was my favorite, when it came to relationships, I was like, Kimberly has to be with Tommy. Like, it just makes the most sense. And eventually they did. And then, of course, the actress that plays Kimberly left the show, and in canon, they had Kimberly break up with Tommy by sending him a letter. I guess this was before cell phones and texting and all that kind of stuff, but there's something even more brutal about getting a letter to be broken up with than a text message. You know what I mean? There's just something about, like, she had to go through the effort to write it by hand and mail it and let you know that way. Just horrendous, man. But regardless, in the original series, always love these two together. So I have a few on this list that are going to be on the more serious side. And for my number 7, I'm putting Jesse and Celine from the Before trilogy. Now, if you don't know what these movies are, I made a video about it last year that I actually released on Valentine's Day. It's sort of a whole overview, review, my feelings on that franchise video. So I'd really appreciate it if you guys check that out. But if not, the Before trilogy are a series of movies directed by Richard Linklater. One came out in the 90s, one came out in the 2000s, and one came out in the 2010s. And essentially, it picks up in different eras of this relationship in real time. So in the first movie, both actors are in their 20s, and the characters are in their 20s, and they meet, and pretty much the entire film, like all 3 of these movies, are movies about conversation. There's not a lot that happens in the way of plot. They're very character driven. And the first movie is literally these 2 characters walking around all night, having different conversations about different things, getting into really deep topics, understanding each other, and essentially falling in love. The second movie is them meeting back up again, now in their 30s, the same kind of vibe. And the third movie is them in their 40s, and now they have a family together. And it's really cool to see this look into the differences between what relationships are like within those 3 decades and how the characters have grown within that time. It's very much a deeply character-focused sort of film, so if you're not into that kind of stuff, if you're not into long monologues and conversations between characters, then it's probably not going to be your vibe. But if you really dig the idea of watching characters just kind of hang out and talk about things, I would highly recommend these movies. I think they're really, really great. At my number 6 pick, I guess we're sort of going back into horror, but more of the action-adventure vibe, because I'm going to go with Rick O'Connell and Evelyn from the Mummy series. So this is the Mummy remake that came out in 1999. That a lot of people would say is the best Mummy movie, and I really couldn't argue with you too much about that. But I think one of the best things about it is the chemistry between Rick and Evelyn. And I think that gets even more pronounced in the sequel of The Mummy Returns. Whether or not that's better than the first one, is up to you. It depends on how you like your CGI The Rock scorpion monsters. It was a real shame not having the original actress that played Evelyn in the third Mummy movie, which a lot of people forget exists, even myself. But if they were ever to do a reboot, if they were ever to bring Brendan Fraser back, and they could bring Rachel Weisz back, that would be amazing if we could somehow get them now, today. And I know it'll never happen because there's been so many different Mummy reboots and there's more on the way, but there's a part of me deep down that really wishes I could still see Rick and Evelyn in some way, shape, or form in the future. At my number 5, I'm going to put Clarence and Alabama from the movie True Romance. So this is a movie that came out in the 90s, written by Quentin Tarantino and directed by Tony Scott. And this is in my top 10 favorite movies of all time. I love this film, and partly the reason is because I do consider it to be a legitimate romance film. I'm not a rom-com guy, obviously, but when I think of romance movies, True Romance is one of the first ones that comes up. I mean, what is it about? Well, it's about a guy that gets with a call girl, and they decide that they love each other. She escapes from her pimp, played by Gary Oldman, and they also find a bunch of drugs, and they go to Hollywood, California to sell said drugs, make a bunch of money, and then run away together. That's romantic. This movie is filled with great classic Tarantino dialogue, as well as really good action sequences. It has a variety of characters too. It's not solely focused on Clarence and Alabama, but it has a lot of other great side characters. Christopher Walken shows up. But there's something about this movie, the tone of it, because even though it is dark, it also has this sort of whimsical, like, fairy tale feeling to it. I don't really know how to describe it, but it's one of those films that I come back to time and time again, and it just puts a smile on my face. Like, there's something about this movie that invokes the feeling of joy, and that's so rare these days that, you know, it's always going to be a special movie in my heart, and those two characters are great together. Then on my number 4 pick, I figured I should put this couple on this list because it would be weird if I didn't, but I'm going to pick Joel and Clementine from Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Now, I wouldn't necessarily say that they are couple goals, but I think this movie is very important for many, many reasons. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind is my favorite film of all time. Not just in my top 10, it is my number 1. It is a movie that really had a profound effect on me. It made me feel all kinds of emotions, and I think it has an incredibly important message at the end of the day about the value of, you know, enjoying the present moment and knowing that everything that you experience builds into who you are as a person. And also remembering the reasons why you love somebody. It's a movie about this guy, Joel, that finds out that his girlfriend has undergone a procedure to erase all of her memories of him. So she doesn't know who he is anymore. And he gets very angry and frustrated and goes to have this same procedure done. And 90% of this movie takes place within his mind going through the memories. But the creative aspect of the film is that it starts with the most recent memory and works its way backwards. So you kind of see the relationship in reverse. And about halfway through the procedure, he starts to become conscious of what's happening, but he can't do anything about it because his body's actually asleep. He's just in his head. And so he has to watch all of these memories disappear one by one while changing his mind. He wants to hold on to the memories. He wants to keep the memories, but he's just sort of, powerless to do anything to stop it. And through that experience of him going backwards through the memories all the way up to the point where they first met, you know, it like rediscovers reasons as to why he loved her in the first place and why those memories are important to him. And I think because of that, like, you know, it's a movie that's just very, very important to me for a lot of those reasons. And I also think it's a brilliantly made film. Like, I think it's technically a great film. I think the performances are amazing all around. But like, these two in a relationship, should they actually be together? I mean, there is a lot of negativity in their relationship. And I think the message of the movie isn't necessarily about them being such amazing, you know, soul connected partners that they have to be together. I think the movie is more so about why all of your experiences are important and that you wouldn't want to forget them if you really had the choice. But at the same time, since the movie is about a couple and it is my favorite movie of all time, I feel like it would be weird to not put them on this list. So they're here. Now at my number 3, this is true couple goals right here. This is Morticia and Gomez from the Addams Family. Now, I'm most familiar with the 90s Addams Family with Raul Julia and everything, but you could go from any interpretation or incarnation of the Addams Family. I don't think that they've ever gotten this aspect wrong in any degree. It's just how much these two characters love each other and how obsessed they are with each other and how they still have so much visceral passion for one another. You know what I mean? Like, on both sides, like, they're so into one another, and even though they have a bunch of kids and they have other family members in their house and they do all these crazy wacky things, the core essence of it is that Gomez and Morticia are absolutely enamored and obsessed with one another. And that's what makes it great, is that you feel that desire, you feel that passion, you feel that love, and there's just no way around it. Like, they are couple goals, whether or not you love, you know, doing the mamushka or not. I think they are. Now at my number 2, I'm going to go with Jimmy and Kim from Better Call Saul. Now, if you would have told me before I watched it that a love story is going to be one of the core foundational elements of a Saul Goodman backstory, I would have never believed you. And the fact of the matter is, I was unexpecting anything that happened between Jimmy and Kim. And when I was first watching Better Call Saul, you know, I'll be honest, I was one of those people that during the first season or two, I was like, man, I don't know if I like this. I mean, it's all right. I'm enjoying it a little bit more. And then by the time I finished it, I was in love with the show. And then I've gone back and rewatched it. And now I love seasons 1 and 2 even more because I know how important they are building up to the later seasons. And the payoff is just incredible. So all that being said, I didn't know anything that was going to happen between Jimmy and Kim. That wasn't spoiled for me. Even though I came into the show late, I didn't really know anything about these two characters. You know, it's crazy to see how many of Jimmy's decisions really come down to him wanting to, you know, for the betterment of Kim, or how Kim inspired and motivated him to get into law in the first place. I mean, along with, you know, his brother and whatnot. There's so many different aspects to Better Call Saul. It's not boiled down to just like a love story, but the point what I'm trying to get at is that this love story to me was so strong. It was such a motivating factor for both these characters, and how they just continue to enable one another, you know, in different circumstances. And it's a slow burn getting to a point where both of them together are just toxic to the world around them, but they have so much power together. You know what I mean? Like with these forces combined, almost everything is at their disposal to cause as much chaos as possible. And to watch that kind of unravel, to watch that build and then watch it unravel was one of my favorite things about watching the show. Especially since Breaking Bad that came before it didn't really have any central, you know, important love story. I mean, Walt and Skyler it is what it is, you know, and then there's Jesse and Jane and stuff, but Jimmy and Kim is just on a different level, in my opinion. So yeah, they're up here on this list. And then my number one, that probably is my actual number one, and probably forever will be, at least in the realm of movies and television, is Buffy and Angel. And you can get into a lot of trouble with this in the Buffy fandom, but I don't really care because there's so many different shippers that ship different characters. But for me, it's always been Buffy and Angel, and a lot of that is because of the passion. A lot of that is because I fell in love with the series in season 2, which is when Buffy and Angel get together, as well as, well, if you've seen the series, you know what happens, and the chaos that ensues with their relationship being cemented with one another. But I love these characters. Angel is my favorite character in the Buffy universe, so including both shows, Buffy and Angel. Angel is my favorite character. Once again, Angel was kind of motivated and inspired by Buffy. You know, she's the reason that he stopped living in alleyways and eating rats and sort of cleaned himself up and became this demon fighter in of himself. As well, you know, she was his first love, and he was her first love. And so a lot of emphasis is put on that. And for me, even though, you know, Angel goes off and has his own series and everything, whenever Angel and Buffy are back together in a scene, or whenever they think about one another, or whenever the topic is brought up, you can just tell that there is this, like, unyielding passion between them that will never go away. And it's just something about it. The Slayer, vampire with a soul. I watched the show very young, so sue me. But I will just never stop loving Buffy and Angel as a couple. And when I think about romance in general, when it comes to media, again, outside of anime and manga, Buffy and Angel is pretty much the first thing I think about. So there you go, guys. That is my top 10 list of my favorite couples in movies and television. Let me know your list down below, or your top number 1, top 5, whatever you want to rank down below. Thanks as always for watching, guys. I deeply appreciate it. If you will, I'm just going to plug a little bit. You can click off the video if you want to. I'm just going to plug a little bit, but I do have a Patreon and I do have channel memberships, and I would deeply, deeply, deeply appreciate it if you considered joining either one. You can do so for as low as $1 a month. I'm struggling a bit on YouTube right now. It's really hard for videos to get any kind of traction, and a lot of them are stumbling and falling and not really getting above like 1,000 views, which is not good. I'm okay for right now, but I'm just a little bit nervous for the future. So if there's anything that you could do to contribute, I would appreciate it. You don't have to, obviously, just throwing that out there. But thanks as always for watching. Regardless, every like, every comment, every view helps as well. And so that's also a way to do it. But with the complaining out of the way, I hope you have a good rest of your day, rest of your week, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Take care.